Hello everyone, welcome back. So we're another week down, and this week's been spent digging through old information and archives and little bits and pieces, because we did get some original service documentation and parts lifing and bits and pieces for FTR3, notably around Bathurst in 2000, which has been really interesting to go through. So we'll share that with you. I just want to quickly thank everyone who has signed up as a member over the last week or so. It's really exciting to see this start to build. We did put up a new member video last night, which is a behind the scenes look at when we took car 31 out to the airfield.
What's the go, Cub?
Flat battery.
Oh, well, I've got my pushing boots on.
And it's a bit of a light-hearted, unedited look at what actually went on behind the scenes, because although the finished product looked like we had it all under control, there was a few little dramas. So we shared all that with you there, and we really appreciate your support. So if you're new to the channel, you may not know that both the Super Cheap Auto Falcon and FTR3 raced together for the first time at the 2000 Bathurst 1000. And we get asked about that race quite a lot, and just little things like how the cars are prepped and the lead up and bits and pieces. So we spent this week going through some old information that was kindly sent to us, and it does give a good insight into the lead up for these cars into the great race and the level of preparation that's required to get them through to the finish line. Now you can see here both FTR3 and the Super Cheap Auto Falcon did run around together in the great race, but the lead up for both cars was very different. The Super Cheap Auto Falcon took a race win at Sandown. It was a brand new car at the start of the 2000 season. Steve did quite well, as I said, took a race win, and then the common thought process on that is the car was then, put on ice and then prepped for Bathurst. Back in the 2000s, the calendar was a lot busier than what it is today, and the car had to be loaded up straight after Bathurst, trucked back up to the Gold Coast, prepped and raced around the streets of the Gold Coast the following weekend. And the plan was to get the car through the event and then prep it for Bathurst. Unfortunately, those plans didn't go to plan, and the car ended up with quite a bit of damage at the very beginning of the race.
On the streets of the Gold Coast, red lights on, we're away. Russell England, nice start. The Rat, an even better start though. A drag race down into turn one for the first time. The Castrol Commodore up against the Shell Helix Ford. They thunder down the Gold Coast Highway for the first time. Russell muscles out the Rat and takes the lead.
Climb back to form for the Ford Motor Company. They've had a wretched couple of seasons. 19-round winning streak.
There we go. Richards has gone into the back of Ellery. Larkham's gone off as well. Greg Murphy tangled in that one. This is a car park here. That's on the exit of FedEx turn, or skilled turn, I should say. Boy, oh boy. And looks like
Murphy's car there, Mark.
Hear the command from race control, but that track looks virtually blocked. It was very difficult for the field to pick their way past. Here, safety car will be coming out on the track any moment now.
Greg Murphy does not look happy there to the right hand.
Time when you want to have a chat, really.
No, exactly.
You see, you can't really see what it looked like. Mark Larkham did something at the beginning by virtue of the fact he was the first car, wasn't he?
It was just a concertina.
Yeah,
after that,
concertina thing. It looked like then maybe Murph got on the brakes.
What do you think happened there?
Yeah, concertina, which has taken out both the Kmart Commodores and the Super Cheap Autos Ford of Stephen Ellery.
Yeah, well, you never know what's going to happen on the streets of surface, bunching up behind them. Track virtually blocked.
It did seem strange the way the back end of Mark's car came out so quick.
Yeah, I mean, first lap, it could have been anything. It's actually been quite slippery through that part of the track all weekend. Cold tyres, and we've actually had some rain, so it's washed the surface.
Expensive end to their Gold Coast campaign, and a couple of busy weeks coming up for the Kmart race team.
And he's got the big screen right in front of him.
So while the Ellerys were rushing around to prepare car 31 for Bathurst, FTR had a totally different battle on their hands. In the lead up to Bathurst in 2000, Glenn Seton had a massive testing accident in FTR1, and the car was so badly damaged that it never raced main game again, and Glenn was pretty injured and beaten up from the accident, so he was also unable to race for a period of time. The car ended up running FTR2 with Neil Crompton for the Sandown and Gold Coast events, and they ran as a single car team while they completed FTR3 for the Bathurst race. It was suggested that they could rush the build of FTR3 and get it on track in a hurry, but it was decided, as shown in this article, that they would make sure the build was perfect for the great race, and Glenn would then jump back behind the wheel at Bathurst in a brand new car. FTR3 was originally meant to be shaken down at Winton Raceway, get Glenn Seton back behind the wheel, and also throw Marcus Ambrose in for a few laps as he tried to build up his reputation to get a main game drive in the coming years. Now that test didn't go ahead, and I haven't been able to find out whether Marcus actually got a drive of FTR3. We know he drove BA1 in Bathurst practice in 2004, but I haven't been able to confirm whether he did drive this car. The Winton test never happened. The car was shaken down at Phillip Island, and I only know that because the photos in the logbook were taken in the pit lane of Phillip Island, and that definitely happened before the car made its way to Bathurst in 2000. So the cars had very different lead-ups, the drivers had very different lead-ups, but it still found their way to race against each other really closely throughout the day at Bathurst in 2000. Now this is where it gets really interesting. We've been able to get our hands on some original service documents from the great race in 2000, and it does show the lengths the teams go to get these cars prepared and on a track to survive the 1,000 kilometres. Now, there's been a lot of different theories over the years as to, I guess, what the best way to attack Bathurst is, but back in these days, the cars generally had a whole new driveline fitted at some stage throughout the weekend, new engine, gearbox, the whole lot. So it was all fresh for the great race. Whether that was done before qualifying or top 10 shootout or on the Saturday night before the race, it generally happened at some stage as the weekend went on. These days, well, that generally doesn't happen. But the cars are good for about, or the engines are good for about 4,000 Ks in this era. So a lot of them were freshened up and had a nice fresh engine dropped in for the race. Now, what's really interesting here is these service documents on the gearboxes. You can see it shows every single part that's been replaced, when, down to the kilometre as to their service life. And what's really interesting is you can see the gearboxes are all individually numbered. Now, if you have a look at gearbox 178 here as an example, it has done, or ended up at this point, 1,700 Ks since its rebuild, and it did 435 Ks at Bathurst in 2000. You come across to gearbox 212, and it did exactly the same amount of Ks at Bathurst in 2000. So it's not a far stretch to believe that these are the two gearboxes that were in the car for practice. They did all the practice sessions side by side in car 5 and car 6, and then the cars had new gearboxes fitted. Now, if you come across and have a look at gearbox 242, similar situation, everything's rebuilt. You go back and have a look, and it's only got Phillip Island on the gearbox and a reference to Bathurst again. But it only did 500 kilometres at Bathurst, which again, you're not going to change your gearbox mid-race, so that doesn't make sense. You go across to gearbox 243 and have a look at the kilometres, and all of a sudden, you've got for Bathurst a 1,200 kilometre usage, so that starts to make sense. Now, I've gone back and added up all the laps the cars did throughout the weekend, so we're talking all the practice, the qualifying, the shootout, in laps, out laps, the whole lot, and I've been able to narrow it all down. So these two gearboxes doing exactly the same amount of kilometres were in the car for practice. So car 5 and car 6, I haven't been able to prove which gearbox was in which car, but it's safe to say that was the case. If we come across to these gearboxes here, gearbox 242, the reason why it's only got 500 Ks on it is this would have been the gearbox that was in the car in car 6, the Wayne Gardner Bates car that went out of the race fairly early with clutch failure. We go across here to gearbox 243, and it's got more of a number on it that would suggest that the car did a full race. So it's got 1,205 Ks on it, and that would be reflective of FTR3 car 5 finishing the great race. Now again, if we go back and have a look at all the results, the car did, because of the Big Kev incident and the front bar getting knocked off, it did 158 laps during the race. It did 6 laps in the warm-up, 18 laps in practice 4. It did a lap in the shootout, and it also, back in those days, it had a warm-up for the shootout, which was a 4-lap run. So if you add in-laps, out-laps, everything to those numbers, all of a sudden you get around 187 laps plus the in and out, which you add that roughly together, it's around that 1,200 kilometre distance. So it's fairly safe to say that the gearbox 243 was in FTR3 for the great race in 2000. It was installed to the car on Friday night, which means it did the full race, the morning warm-up, practice 4, both shootout sessions while in the car. The original gearbox, which is one of the 2 gearboxes listed with the same amount of kilometres, it completed all practice and qualifying before the change. Now, the likelihood of us finding this gearbox is next to none, and realistically, I'm not factoring in that we're going to be able to find it to reunite it with the car. But in saying that, it's a cool piece of history to know, and just to get a bit of an idea how the cars were prepped, because obviously FTR made the changes to the mechanicals on the Friday night, so they had a solid Saturday running before they entered the car for the great race on the Sunday, where if you watch a lot of documentaries from the 2000s, teams were electing to change their running gear on the Saturday night and use the warm-up to test the car. So different ideas, different times, but it's pretty cool to be able to narrow all this information down on a car that hasn't seen a racetrack in many years and last competed at Bathurst coming up on 26 years ago. So we know FTR3 finished a few laps down due to the front end being knocked off by that well-known Big Kev incident. The Super Cheap Auto Falcon was an absolute rocket, and all the footage you look from 2000, it was so strong in a straight line, same as it was at Sandown. It was really, really cool to see this car just launching past a lot of the competitors. Now, unfortunately, I can say this with a reasonable degree of confidence. I believe the reason why this car didn't finish is it just cooked itself. A few articles I've read to suggest that it was overheating throughout the day. And if you have a look, if we go to the details here, the car ended up retiring on lap 82. And if you have a look at the cars around it, it was massively quicker, like comfortably quicker. So it had really, really good pace, but I think combined with Steve having to drive the wheels off it to try and make up the lap, running off early in the race and filling the radiator full of mud, it's no doubt had an impact on the cooling system. But you look at it, another near miss for an AU Falcon. Both the cars had the pace on that day, but the planets didn't align, and another near miss for an AU Falcon, but it does make them the more desirable in 2026. The fun part of these restorations is obviously getting the hands dirty and bringing them back to life, but I do get a lot of enjoyment out of trying to retrace their steps 25 years later, and especially when a lot of you guys are sending in information, and that enables us to do it. So once again, I really appreciate everyone's support, and that's through the member channel and followers, subscribers, people that have followed us on Facebook, anyone that's really helped us get to where we are today in this journey, because the cars wouldn't have this, I guess, amount of accuracy without your input and sharing of information. So we'll push on here for the rest of the weekend, and we really appreciate your support, and we'll have more for you as soon as we can. Thanks again. We'll speak with you soon.